Natty, what's going on,
Hey
buddy?
Ryan, how are
Uh,
you doing? Live here from Redmond, Washington
yeah,
at Microsoft Office.
I am live from another part in the country. Not in California today. I will be there tonight, but I'm out in Arizona in a last minute visit out here. But I'm excited to have you on a LinkedIn Live. I know we've done webinars in the past, Natty, and I think this is a little bit more fun. It's a little bit less formal. We don't have script, and we're not just being very targeted and specific, and it gets to be a lot more social and fun. For those who are joining for the first time or who are joining, I am Ryan Rocliffe. I'm the field CTO here at Hyper, and I do have Nati with me. Nati, if you want to go ahead and introduce
Yeah,
yourself.
sounds good. My name is Nateeb Purtikun, and I'm part of Microsoft security team. My team basically work with our amazing partner on product integrations. So today, like, I'm super excited to talk more about how do we work, together between Hyper and Microsoft to help you go to get phishing resistant MFA, deployment fast for all the users you have.
So, for anybody who is watching, who is here right now, if you want to engage with us, please write some comments, questions. We'll catch them as we're going through the live stream. Nati and I are really looking forward for more of an engagement to kind of diverge a little bit from any kind of what we thought we were planning on talking about, make it a little bit more fun and lively. Also, if you do enjoy this content, comment, like, subscribe if you're on the YouTube side of things. It really helps Hyper know if we're doing the right topics and hopefully enlightening individuals. But as Nati was saying, is talking about fast tracking our identity. We came up with a kind of cool name, and I'm going to give extended amount of props to our designer, Davide. Like, the dude is just crushing it with design. Every time he produces something, I just sit here and smile. I'm just so entertained by it. But enough about that. What we can do is go ahead and get moving into kind of set the premise on why passkeys and verified credentials, I think, is pretty important. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm pretty sure not to you've seen some of these articles as
Of
well,
course.
and I will advocate like the extensive amount of support for KnowBe4 for coming out and sharing their story of what they were dealing with a nation state actor. Um, as well as any other kind of compromises. If you were unaware, Hyper shared about 2 weeks ago that we had our own interview fraud story. Um, the nice part about that was it doesn't necessarily fall into the authentication related breach numbers. It was more of I think, a productivity cost for us because we basically couldn't onboard an employee that day. I'm not sure if you have seen anything similar with the customers or partners you talk with
Yeah,
as you go through it.
I think it's a really important topic. A few customers I've talked to kind of start to kind of be aware about this issue, and they had to be really thoughtful about the employee onboarding, especially like since the COVID situation, many companies kind of moved the entire onboarding experience to be remote or virtual, right? And this is where like all the attackers can use the virtual environment with less secure approach to be part of the employee. And then when you're in the environment, it's super easy to like start to attack in more environments. So I think that's where like it's super critical to get the right people in to your organization, right?
Yeah, it's interesting in where we're kind of making that pivot, and I think it's because we finally did come up with a technology with the FIDO Alliance and using passkeys as that technology, making phishing resistant viable. And now I think over the last year in 24, as we start thinking about 25, we kind of were vetting out. Hey, is this viable? Is this going to be something that can take off? And obviously, with the work with Microsoft in the alliance, as well as Hyper and Google and Apple all working together on this, I'm going to say now that in 25, every business should be treating that passkeys should be the baseline of all projects moving forward. It's a pretty strong, bold statement.
It's very critical, Ryan, because like many kind of years back when Microsoft first saw the U.S. president's cyber executive order, like it's clear that the U.S. government set the bar very high, and we at Microsoft has been investing our engineering time to make sure we have all the right technology to support phishing resistant deployment all up, starting from like how can you support all the credentials that are phishing resistant from smart card, cert based auth to passkey to FIDO. And it's not just that, right? Apart from supporting, we have to make sure that all the environments that customer have to use from virtual environment to desktop to phone, it have to all work just fine. And also the other piece is around policy setting. You can't just allow people to use whatever MFA they want because certain people inside the organization, you might want to mandate them, right, to use only phishing resistant. And I would, to your point, argue everyone should just use phishing resistant MFA because it's really critical. And it's not just yourself or employee, contractors, guests that come into your environment. These are like, they can be the weakest link that will allow more attackers to go into your organization. And that's to me, to your point, is the baseline is super critical. My entire team now are phishing resistant as well because we definitely had to lead with example and like show what possible. And with the passkey, I love the fact that it's super easy to enroll and to use it. So there's not much issue that my team has experienced it at all, and we are making it easier for customer and for our partner like Hyper to help other customer as well.
Yeah, it's a. I know you guys had a pretty big initiative in 24, like taking on a little bit more security focused feature component set, and I can only imagine if you got your whole team, at least you got your side done. You have additional protections for you and your team, and now you get to run around being evangelists for getting hopefully other teams as well.
Yeah,
But we did
yeah.
have we had a growing moment over the last year, which came into capabilities that I think helped make some of this a little bit more viable. Which is when we did a webinar not too long ago, and I'm going to do these bullet points kind of out of order. I'm going to go from bottom up. I think the big step was that external authentication methods that you guys went through your preview, got into public, and what that allowed your customers and our customers to be able to start planning and adopting, because some of us have been around since the days of the custom controls and the work that was being done there, and I think this pivot is a very strong signal to the rest of our customers, Microsoft and Hypers, that hey, it's a priority for Microsoft too.
Yeah, just to add there on the EM per feature, right? Like we heard loud and clear is that many customer prefer their vendor of choice. Like Hyper is so well known in the financial industry, and that's why like we realized pretty quickly that when we designed custom control, it didn't meet the bar. In fact, it didn't provide MFA claim. If you truly want to enforce MFA everywhere, custom control was not it, right? So that's why we built the external auth method to enable our customer to truly use good MFA solution that they can use well and meet the MFA requirements. And it's open standard, right? We use open OIDC redirect. So basically any MFA vendors, any passkey vendor can use Entra ID to integrate, your MFA of choice with EAM. So that's to me super exciting. We are in the preview stage right now. So if anyone use the experience and you have some good or some feedback for both Hyper and Microsoft to help fix the experience before we go make it GA. We love to hear more from you, but this is the beginning of how we enable third-party, ecosystem to work with Microsoft really well from the MFA standpoint.
I'm gonna say thank you for correcting me and making sure you're saying it is still public preview. It's preview. It's not
Yes,
GA. It's not GA.
yes.
That was normally I have a product manager on with me that tells me like, hey, dude, shut up, don't say that stuff. Um,
No, it's important because we know that there's a lot more to do. Like one of the feedback I heard from customer was, hey, we want to have like primary factor through EAM. We want to be able to use conditional access auth string as part of the EAM. So there's a lot more feedback that we usually use the preview time to listen deeply to customer, what kind of impact that they see, so that we can prioritize our team time correctly. Because I think I want to steal a quote from Satya here, like security is the number one job for Microsoft, right? And I think we want to make sure that whatever we build meets security standard that customer expect. And I'd love to hear more from customer who are using custom control today, or moving from ADFS and want to use EAM from Entra ID, and what kind of blocker and experience that you want to hear from Microsoft. And our partner like Hyper, we want to fix that and build a better experience for you before you go GA. So
Yeah, I would then advocate for anybody who watches this. One, if you're a hyper customer or you want to and you're working with us, raise this and we'll make sure we get Microsoft and Nati involved where possible. If not, everybody gets to watch Nati right now, and he just said, hey, he wants to hear from you. So you could definitely
yes,
get involved in direct contact there as well. Um, One of the things that I was going through, I think, as we were working through, EAM and a couple other things, because we were kind of pushing the envelope of bringing like a third party passkey provider type context into the world with you guys. I think the next evolution, which is the FIDO2 provisioning APIs. I the enrollment with FIDO and passkeys, like being on the outside, was it's a little bit cumbersome, right? We have demos of showing that you would have somebody who did an enrollment on an endpoint, and then we would have to do a secondary enrollment in Intra ID as well.
yeah.
And this the nerd in me loves the fact that we got to these having these APIs, because one, it lets us code something directly. Two, it takes off that additional step on the end user, right? So as we're sitting here talking about how great phishing resistant authentication is and MFA and all these things, if we can't make it simple for the user who's not tech savvy, who doesn't spend their life in the security buckets and wants to do this all day, if we can't make it easy for that user, adoption is going to be poor, and we're going to have. So the excitement for me is to see that these APIs are being released, and that we get to actually build against them and make that experience really, really good for the end user.
I love it as well, Ryan. I'm going to share some personal stories. Like a few years ago, when I helped one of the customer, it's a city, somewhere in the world that want to protect like firefighters and police men and women to be secure from all the phishing attacks, right? But those people might not be tech savvy, and using passkey was challenging for them to enroll it, and that's what kind of made me realize, and my team realized, that wow, we had to make the experience simpler for provisioning, right? And in many kind of occasions, the IT admin had to get a lot of security key or pass key to enroll for each employee. And as we all know, when it comes down to global companies that have to like deploy pass key for a lot of users around the world, that's not scalable. That's why like we built FIDO2 provisioning APIs that will help simplify the experience, for our customer. And now I'm glad that Hyper also take advantage of FIDO2 provisioning API to simplify the experience, and hopefully we can increase the number of people who use passkey in upcoming years, and we can truly get rid of password, because eventually that's where like we want to get to, with where we have the world with no password, right?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of described one. There's a question that I'll read to you here, not to you, because it's specifically directed to you.
Yeah, yeah,
But you bring up like it's a really good, I think, example of users that have a priority that is not technology related, that is not knowledge worker related. You describe, police officers, male or female. You talk about firefighters. You're talking about first responders in essence, which primary, like, and it's not just that field. I mean, we could look at healthcare, like doctors. Their primary functioning with technology is not to interact with technology. It is to save life. It is to basically not touch an electronic device if possible. So making that simple, making that efficient, and making that less complicated is, I think, the only way that we solve this problem 100%, as you were saying. Like, how do we get to a passless world? How do we get to a passkey focused world? And I think as we're taking all these inputs in, it's how we get there. But it looks like there is a question from
yeah,
Kyle Rutherford, specifically for you,
yeah,
Nati. Is it
yes.
possible yet to define a custom auth strength and map that to an EAM based MFA?
Uh, First of all, hey Kyle, good to see you. So like I mentioned earlier, we put this as part of the consideration, for the improvement. We know today that auth strength feature is extremely effective to get people from the end user to use our phishing resistant MFA. So we hear you. We plan to actually explore it after we have the GA of our EAM, but that's definitely one of the leading asks from our customer for sure. Today, it's not possible yet. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, we gotta be careful on these lives. Sometimes people give you little hot questions, and you're gonna have to come up with some
No,
stuff on the fly.
I love this kind of question honestly because the whole live LinkedIn live is meant to be more like informal, share some early thought about where we're going, and we can share some of the example of what we've been thinking at Microsoft. How can we get feedback from the customer and partner like all of you? So yeah, we are here to listen and happy to answer any tough questions.
All right. So we'll get on to the next. What I think is more the pie in the sky, the dream state. As we talk about what these flows would be like in regards to um, that pastoralist journey that we were talking about. Like, what's a user do? How they interact? Well, the first part is in an onboarding scenario. There are still businesses and enterprises that will ship laptops out with a sticky note or some other component. Um, Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. Helps us feel good that we're doing this. Um, get past that sticky note scenario and not have any shared secrets coming down the way. So when we look at a flow, what we're looking at is a user who gets their laptop issued to them. They're able to leverage technically a hyper affirm for the onboarding, and when actually accessing Intra ID, they get a tap. So it's a one-time use code, and once that code is issued, then there's an enrollment for a authenticator. Now that could be Hello, that could be Hyper's mobile app, that could be a YubiKey, that could be a smart card, right? It could be anything at that point as you go through the enrollment within the enterprise. And what do? We kind of, in essence, now have justified or validated and verified that the individual who is going to get that credential has been truly verified. And then obviously life is nice and easy for that end user in that bottom kind of flow in the happy path with EAM dictating what those flows would be.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's a very, very beautiful, positive flow and picture
yeah,
for what I like to see.
yeah. I love the fact that because I've known Hyper as a company for the past several years now, like the pivot from passwordless company to basically looking at the identity assurance end to end. That's what customer is looking for. They want to be able to protect the end user, right? Uh, from that first day coming in to the day that they exit the company, like how can we secure end to end of the experience? And also like the team from Hyper has been working really hard to integrate variety of integration with Microsoft Entra ID, right? Because even within our world in TriD, we have many solutions now, many features now to protect our customer. An example that Ryan mentioned on the Intra ID temp access pass. That's exactly we built for employee onboarding experience. We also have things like Windows Hello for Business and more things. So glad that we show this simple flow of how Hyper integrate with Microsoft and how customer can use it in their regular kind of daily basis, right?
And as you were talking there, Nati, we got another question. Does it require a firm to enroll? So Hyper Affirm is our product offering for IDV, for onboarding and for verifying users. It happens to be something that we have a direct integration with Entra to issue a tap. And we also have another integration specifically for it. But if you choose not to want to use IDV as you issue into enrollments, then that would be your choice, Mayhew. I wouldn't recommend it. I recommend at least doing some form of IDV before you issue any form of credentials to users today. It's a strong position I have taken within the last year. And it's also supported by the fact that we've had interview fraud stories. You have KnowBe4's nation state acting going on from North Korea. And we've also had all the other situations outside of KnowBe4 where there
Yep.
was a laptop farm in Tennessee. So um, obviously, I'm going to be biased and say, yes, you want to use Hyper. If you are saying that you don't want to use Hyper, then that's definitely your choice. I would strongly recommend that you would look at implementing something to protect along the way.
Yeah, makes sense. I like your point around like IDV. Like personally, that also important component on top of life, check to make sure that this is the person you plan to onboard. In fact, like in the past 6 months, I've hired two more people on my team, and Microsoft have similar flow here as well. We basically check employee, I think, through like live calls. So I have to join the call before we can actually give them a pass to get to like creating account, set up MFA and others. And so far, the experience has been better over time because people now realize that um, these checkpoints are critical, but how do we streamline the process? That's going to be quite key for both the hiring manager and employees.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. Like we I think as an industry we kind of pulled back with the IDV side of things and the verification in the very beginning because we were worried about the cumbersome. It was challenging. It was going to be hard. I think there's been enough business justification from the fraudulent and or the challenges in that process that it's starting to outweigh and moving. Why we're seeing the numbers um, basically shift to saying that the preventive doing things up front is going to be a much more business savvy decision as we move forward. One of the things that I didn't describe in this view here, though, is being that this is EAM kind of story, and then having daily access. This kind of goes into why I think that the next iteration, because we have TAP in this example, but if we think about the FIDO2 provisioning APIs, I think this is actually where we can kind of kick it up a notch, right? Um, Imagine that onboarding flow. In essence, you use a tap, and now we use a FIDO2 passkey credential provisioning state, leveraging these APIs to onboard, whether it be Hello, Hyper's enterprise passkey, or any other authenticator. This is where the kind of now we really get passkey focused. And I think it gets closer to the alignment of the OMB message from the federal government. I think we're like almost 2 years deep on that OMB letter, which is great. That's how governments operate. Make a policy, and that doesn't get implemented for like 2, 3 years. So it's been giving us time to build it out.
Yeah, and it's a real problem, right? Like, like I mentioned the example earlier around some company previously had to have IT admin or procurement to enroll like each pass key for each user. And when I went to like the IT admin, office room and we have like a box of keys and pass key to go do, like that's to me like, oh my God, you should use something that is more automated to save time because there are better things to do. That you can think about policy setting versus like doing manual operation tasks. So I'm glad that first of all we have this API, and obviously like with the strong endorsement from the OMB and CISA, right, to get things going. So we're glad that now it's more real. We have the integration with partners like Hyper, and please, once you use it, if you have any feedback, again, let us know. Love to improve the experience over time because this is the beginning of helping you to enroll more passkey, users in your organization.
You kind of brought it up, and and it kind of triggered the whole challenge that I don't know if we talk a lot about it, which is that whole box of keys, and then you have an admin that's provisioning and having to manually do things. I think there are some use cases that might still require that with enterprise attestation situations,
Yeah.
but that is something that I think we definitely kind of glaze over as a business benefit, that we're now in this technology stance that we can actually verify people. They can do a self provision, and it doesn't have to have an IT admin who's managing inventory and provisioning. There are so many other things that somebody could do other than that, and I think we just you were speaking to it, and it's just like, you know what, we don't talk a lot about that. We don't want to overburden that one, but I think there's a lot more value there than many might be aware of.
I agree. Yeah.
Um, so we had some pretty good taglines. Once again, Davide freaking coming up with amazing designs, and then a couple others like Alex Poole who definitely work on these some of these messages and lines. I'm just, you know, creativity, not my strong suit, Hello, you got a visitor behind you.
I know,
Wel-
yes.
welcome, welcome to the live, sir.
Yes, this is why I want to say something. This is not a office of scamming people because it looked like I'm in the call center trying to call people during the holiday season. That's not the case. I'm in the office live.
so, so what we want to look at is that I think I like to kind of guess be forward thinking or future thinking in a lot of these regards, which is we've got phishing resistant authenticators. We've gotten passkeys. We spent the last year, we've been advocating, evangelizing, getting businesses to adopt. You, Nati, and Microsoft together have been kind of evolving and growing your own adoption set. And there's another form of tech that is on its way, which is around verified credentials, right? So it's not just a phishing resistant authenticator that's involved. It's so how do we kind of start evolving how we manage an identity, in my opinion. And one of the capabilities that Microsoft recently released as well and made available was having Microsoft Authenticator support a verified credential, or in essence, acting like an identity wallet, if you will. And one of the things that we added in our outputs of our onboarding and identity verification tooling is after a user has been successfully verified, they could go ahead and enroll in a verified credential and have that enrolled into the Microsoft Authenticator. Now, this is temporary. It's not going to be the only output because our great partnership will have expansion as this is more or less a proving ground, right? I would say this is an early adaptation of where verified credentials are with industry and having to have people have support for it. But when we were talking about onboarding and or recovery or any of these other flows, I think this kind of opens up a door for how you keep it digitalized and more efficient and easier, and making it easier. Like we bring up those firefighters, we bring up those police officers, you end up with a verified credential, you have a re-enrollment or anything else. It gets a lot easier.
Yeah, and from Microsoft standpoint, like we now have the Microsoft Entra Verify ID. We intend to make this a platform, right? So basically, Hyper a firm can plug in to all Verify ID capabilities, and to your point, like we want to solve the use cases around employee onboarding, right? Like self-serve account recovery. If you can prove who you are, that you are with the right kind of touch point or IDV and whatnot, like we can then be the platform that will help to get employee back on track. Because sometimes you might forget your passkey at home. I forgot my phone in the car sometimes. So, there's a lot of ways for us to improve the experience because we know that you want to be able to log in securely to your environments. So
Yeah, the so many additional flexible components that come once we add another kind of form of identity. If we do promote here at Hyper kind of like an MFV, like a multi-factor verification. Like it's a way to basically start looking at maybe it's not time just that a passkey is good enough, but maybe there's been patterns of an identity behavior within the organization that maybe just says, hey, you know what? Let's just re-verify this person. Let's do a checkpoint. Let's trigger that. Now, that can be cumbersome if you're doing a government document check, if you're doing selfie and matching. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do that enough times to an end user, you're going to get a complaint. But if that end user has an output of a verified credential, that becomes a signal in that re-verification, which doesn't necessarily mean you have to go through a full document auth and selfie. So we kind of get this to be a little bit more efficient. And once again, carrying that same story for the end users, making it easy and adoptable or easy to use for these users, then adoption will go through the roof. And we're getting all the great benefits of security. So a couple of the bullet points we have here is, adopt identity first security strategies and bring your organization through the finish line. Love the marketing term there. Advocating, obviously, verified people, not accounts. And then also continuous and risk driven workforce security. So this is that evolution. We've talked about it for many, many years with Gartner, which is the continuous authentication. It was Carta, now it's CAP, and there's a couple of other different things. But we're getting to that point where we just need constant evaluation of data.
yeah,
And really, the I think what maybe might be a critical point for Microsoft and for the work that we do together, Nati, is is that unified approach to securing the identities between Entra ID and hybrid environments, because you do have a very solid customer base that is in this transition state, right?
Yeah, yeah. I agree, and I like to point around continuous access evaluation, right? Like, while we want to protect from at the front door when people join or come to the environment, I mean that's awesome. But in reality, apart from like the nation state attack that will fake to be the employee, you might have employee that might perhaps got laid off and they do some tricky things. So insider activity can be also quite another risky area, right? So within Microsoft, for example, with Entra ID continuous access evaluation functionality, we can basically looking at like post authentication, like are they there is there any risky activity in the SharePoint online or Share Online that we can help to deactivate tokens, and that way we can protect post signing in. And there's a lot more, scenario that we'd love to dive into in the future as well. I think these are really good conversations. It's not just signing in, but post art is super critical.
It's some of us get to sit here and think about where the next steps are versus just the implementations that need to happen today. And I think that these are all the next steps. I think there is a pretty decent roadmap of where identity needs to go over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that you can start seeing the patterns emerging of where we're going to be advocating for these things. Uh, we
Yeah.
have we have hit 30 minutes though, and we try to keep these at 30 minutes. I told you, Nati, we can end up sitting here having a good time.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I could break an hour and a half. We could podcast all day just hanging out.
Yeah.
If there was any questions, I think like Kyle asked his question, and it looks like we had Mehu had asked his questions. If there was any other questions that had came along the way, and obviously Nati, if you have anything you want to button this whole time up with us
Yeah.
together here with, definitely
Yeah.
throw that out there.
I love to maybe like leave one point for the audience here, right? I know that while we have been talking about MFA and phishing with MFA for a while, but in reality, there are so many organizations that still don't adopt it, especially like executive security admins. Like these are critical roles that are the key to the kingdom, right? So, like I would encourage you all to truly trying to roll out Passkey, because to me personally, it's very simple to deploy, simple to use. Obviously, that's coming from me from the tech savvy audience perspective, but we have more technologies like FIDO provisioning API, like our partner that Hyper that have more tools to help you enroll. Like please go do deploy more MFA for your employee, especially if you can do phishing resist MFA. Now that Entra ID have more support, more options for you to go use. Like we love to see the percentage of phishing resist MFA going up in the next 1 year. So hopefully, like we can count on you to try it out to maybe share your experiences, because apart from like deploying MFA with Entra and Hyper, from Microsoft standpoint, we love to continue improving customer experiences, because if we cannot have the right experience for our customer to truly deploy in a simple way, there'll be no adoption. But right now, I believe we have a good platform for our customer to go deploy it very seamlessly. Again, please let us know if you have an issue. Like Ryan and I will be helping to refine our roadmap to do a better job with all the integrations.
Yeah, it's a I'll give the same message that was at Authenticate. I almost give on every talk I give is like passkey all the things. Like you should operate on any of your roadmaps. Just where can you apply passkeys? And yes, look, there's going to be legacy systems. There's going to be other challenges. But if you can get 85% of your surface coverage, I guarantee you will have an overwhelming benefit from that. And then also start taking on the approaches of how you verifying those identities when you do that work. It's all very much attainable. And, we've seen mass adoption. I think in Authenticate, we were at 1 billion. I think there was 1 billion registered passkeys. And now that's not necessarily just enterprise, that's consumer as well. So passkeys are coming. It's coming. Like, this is going to be our world going forward. So better to execute now, get the confidence, get the benefits, and for anybody that is listening, watching, once again, give us any comments or feedback on this type of content too. And if you
It does look like we lost Ryan, but yeah. I think Ryan want to say, please use Passkey more. And yes, I think please share feedback to us on the content. We love to have a joint conversation to make sure that you all can use Passkey well. I guess that's all that we have. Thank you so much for joining the LinkedIn Live today and looking forward to hearing more from you. Thank you.